So I'd like to very warmly welcome everybody to this year's Netzwerkkonferenz 2020, this time in a slightly different mode, in an online, in a digital mode. My name is Apurv Mahendru. I'm the Deputy Director of the DAAD Regional Office in New Delhi, and I hope that the participants who have joined can hear me. I would appreciate if any of you could just type a yes or a no in the chat. That would, or rather maybe the city where you're logging in from. That would be interesting for me to know as well. Whichever city it is that you're logging in from, that is always interesting. Yeah, so I'm sure that a lot of you are able to hear me. So the yeses are coming in slowly. That's good to know. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for the test. I know that we have people from Potsdam, from Dresden, from Berlin. Wonderful. Well, thank you for this test. Now, I am going to be moderating this session, which is one of the few sessions that is happening live as a part of this year's Netzwerkkonferenz Digital 2020. I'd like to refer it to. And we are fortunate and thankful also to our colleagues in Bonn for making this happen, because it's a very special occasion. This year, the year 2020, is the year that the DAAD Regional Office New Delhi celebrates its 60th Jubilee. So given that occasion, we thought it might be a good opportunity to showcase what has happened in the scientific academic community in India over the past years, how it is developing, what is happening, what is new. And that is the reason that we have today gathered here with a panel of experts that will be giving their particular inputs. As you can read on the slide in front of you, we are going to have two presentations. The first one will be by Dr. Katya Lash, who is the Director of the DAAD Regional Office, New Delhi, followed by a second presentation by Dr. Madhusudan Reddy Nandinini, who is the Science Counselor at the Indian Embassy in Berlin. After these two have given their inputs, so to say, from the German and the Indian perspective, we will then proceed to a panel discussion in which we will be joined by two eminent scientists, Professor Dr. Salma Bava from the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, and Professor Dr. Engineer Dietmar Müller from the TU Clausthal. Both of them have experience also with international collaborative projects with the other country, so they will be giving us their inputs, some practical inputs. This is how the session will happen, and in the end there will be an opportunity for all the participants, the attendees, to also ask one-on-one questions. We have tried to give this session the feel that one generally gets in a real-life face-to-face session. So after the session gets over, one would go and over a cup of coffee, maybe talk to one of the other expert or panelists. So that is going to be the last phase of today's session, where you have the opportunity in individual chat rooms to ask questions to our panelists for today. All right, I would then at this point of time maybe request the first presenter, that is my director actually, Dr. Katya Lash, to take over. Dr. Katya Lash is heading the Außenstelle in India, but before that many of you might know her in her role because she was in charge of the Research in Germany project at Bonn, before which she was also active as a lecturer in Romania. So in different capacities, I'm sure that you must have dealt with her, and this internationalization cooperation is a topic that's very close to her heart, and therefore now at this point of time I think she'll be sharing in the next 15 minutes or so her inputs on this topic, and I will put myself on mute in the meantime. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Apurv, for the nice introduction, and welcome everybody. Just want to add, if you have questions during the presentations, feel free to type them in the chat. We will take them later up in the discussion, or we'll try to answer also your questions in the chat. So as already Apurv mentioned, this session is designed a bit different, so we decided not to make a general introduction into the higher education system into India. I think you could make appointments with us during the NECO if you want information for that point. So we decided to focus a bit on the higher education cooperation and what's going on. And my presentation is going to be a short insight and a little bit of a gateway into the discussion. I will focus a bit on the Indo-German cooperation, past, present, futures, give some numbers, and also some hints where we are thinking the cooperation is heading to. And I would like to kick it off with 2 or 3 words on the DAAD in India. The Delhi office is, as you are aware, responsible not just for India, also for the region. So we are covering Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh too. We offering scholarship and grants for all disciplines. And to just give you a number on the current exchange, so in 2019 we funded over 2,000 scholars in both directions. And at the moment we have more than 90 projects in the cooperation funding. And good to know, and my colleague Adishri Chamketka is also with us today. We are heading also the German Center for Research and Innovation in Delhi. And we have out of 4 offices in the region, Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, and Pune. So maybe just where we are standing and looking past, and Apoorv mentioned that the DAAD Delhi is celebrating its 60th years of presence in India. I just I just wanted to mention some projects which are successfully running over the last couple of years. You might be aware that the Iit Madras, the leading institution in India at this moment, was established with the help of the German government in 1960. And is still very strong related, and we have a 60-year-long strong cooperation between Iit Madras. At the moment, RWTH Aachen is taking the lead in that cooperation, but this is one of the successful projects, and there's a strong cooperation over the last 6 years between the Iit Madras, but also with the other IITs like the IIT Bombay. We managed to establish several centers over the last years in India, and I mean Germany. There is the IGCTC, the Indo-German Science and Technology Center, set up by the 2 ministries, which is fostering research cooperation, focusing a lot of applied researchers. They have funding available in so-called 2+2 projects, so there has to be always involved industry, a successful cooperation, a lot of funding. And good to mention that as well as the German side, as the Indian side are investing in the center, and it has been on for more than 10 years, working in Delhi, and we as DAAD working closely together with them. And it's one of the few centers the German government is running abroad of this kind. Another thing I would like to mention and highlight is the Indo-German Center for Sustainability, which is established at the Iit Madras. This is a center which is celebrated its 10 years existence this February, focusing on sustainability. There are other universities involved. It's not just the Iit Madras. There are other IITs in India and in Germany. A whole network is standing behind that center. So it's the RWTH Aachen, it's TU Berlin, University of Kiel, and TU Stuttgart, who are contributing to the center, and they're focusing on fields and research in sustainability, such as engineering, water, and electricity. And last but not least, to mention the German Center for Research and Innovation, the DWH Delhi, and that leads me to my next slide. The DWH was funded 10 years ago, and we currently have a nice presence of German institutions where the DWH serves as an umbrella organization. Just to give you some facts and figures where we are standing, currently India and Germany or Indian and German institutions are running approximately 500 higher education cooperations in different fields funded by different organizations. We nearly doubled the number of Indian students over the last 5 years. In the last academic year, more than 20,000 Indian students came to Germany, and we are talking here about degree-seeking students. So Indian students are the follow-up runner after China. There's a lot of interest in cooperation. One has to say that these Indian students who come to Germany are coming mostly for doing a master or PhD in Germany. We have over more than 40 funding programs in places. I will come back to that in a minute. So there is a lot of funding available, not just offered by the DAAD, also offered by other funding agencies. We have at the moment 16 German institutions present in India focusing on research. And the last number, and I was also surprised to find out, we have 90 plus projects, cooperations funded by the DAAD with India. So a lot of projects are ongoing. This 90 plus is the whole region. It's not just India, but I think that's an amazing number to see how large is the engagement also of higher education institutions in India, and there's a couple of institutions cooperating So, and maybe that's one key message, is it's worth to cooperate with India, and yes, it's manageable, as a lot of institutions are doing. And yeah, this is the overview on our members of the German Center for Research Innovation. Just mentioned here the science-related and innovation-related institutions, and you see we have presence of numerous prestigious universities, but also research institutions like Jülich, Max Weber Stiftung currently joined the DWH. So there is a lot of things going on, and it's institutions being present, but a lot of corporations, of course. Which leads me to recent developments in the Indian higher education system. I will just just give a short insight. Dr. Reddy from the Indian Embassy will be tackling that in the second presentation. What we witness at the moment is that we have an increasing autonomy for a number of higher education institutions. You might be aware that a lot of institutions don't have autonomy. There's a lot of restrictions ongoing, but we have seen over the last 5 years that more and more institutions are becoming more autonomous. What does that mean for international cooperation? These autonomous institutions don't have to get the agreement for signing MOUs, for instance, with international institutions, and they can recruit international staff on their own. So there's a lot more flexibility for these institutions, and the number is increasing, and it's worthwhile to have a look also in the new institutions, amongst them also autonomous colleges. And for these institutions, it's also possible to run double degree programs, for instance. We have seen over the last couple of months, given the COVID situation, that we have a release regarding online degrees and online courses in India. India has been very restricted on these areas, but now it's possible for 100 Indian institutions to run complete online programs, and also the possibility of having a lot of online content, online connections in the courses of each institution has been eased for institutions. So if you look into cooperation and incorporating online elements in cooperation, that is a good opportunity. You are aware that the DAAD has had a call, the IWAC call for programs. So there is a lot of flexibility now in the programs, and we see an ease in the curricula and an ease to integrate online elements. Last but not least, India published a new education policy 3 weeks ago. It's the first new policy which we had in 34 years. When one looks into internationalization, and there's just 2 things I want to mention, it seems that India will open up for transnational education, double degree programs, but also the possibility to establish campus in India itself, which was forbidden up to that date. We are waiting for the laws at the moment. And I think for you, the German institutions, very important to know there is foreseen that each Indian institution should get an international office in place. We are aware that sometimes contacting institutions can be a bit of a difficulty, and we are looking into that as a DAAD, offering also here help. But there will be good point of contacts, and it's good to see that internationalization is now in the national education policy, and that tells us also something about the importance of internationalization, and that India is really looking into internationalization. Where we're looking into the future, and this is just 3 points I want to mention, and this is strictly the point of the regional office or my point of view. I think it's time to look a little bit more in the diversification of cooperation partners. There has been ongoing cooperation. We think there are at the moment very good also second and third tier universities who look into internationalization, who have good quality. So it's worth to maybe have a fresh look into India and also look for smaller institutions. We've seen a lot of progress, and there are now instruments, rankings in place where one can also evaluate where the Indian institution is standing. The field and the sector is huge. You are aware there are more than 50,000 institutions, but I think it's time to maybe broaden the view and to have, or there are good institutions in India one could cooperate with, which may be not on the map of the German institutions yet. Digitalization, I already mentioned. I think the ease now in the laws offering, I think we can have a look and digitalization should be an element in the future. And I think the new developments in the education policy in India are a good window of opportunity here. And we see at the moment there is a trend towards networks. The Indo-German Center for Sustainability is a good example. So to establish networks, to work on topic fields, so that's a direction one could definitely look into it, and maybe to broaden a bit the network, not just to work on a one-to-one level, to have a look topic-wise into networks and to cooperate with several institutions. So this is just some ideas for the future. We know that sometimes it's a bit of a difficulty to initiate cooperation, especially in a large market as India it is. So last few minutes I would just like to give a short gateway. So how one could approach the sometimes it seems to be difficult Indian market. So get insights and information. I really would encourage you to contact us. We have websites in place as well as the German Center for Research Innovation, and there's of course the DAAD. There is a newsletter. There is the Bildungssystemanalyse. You find these materials here also on the NECO platform. But whenever you have questions, just contact us, get a first insight and information if you need also information on evaluation of the Indian universities which might have been approaching you for cooperation. I think there are a couple of good things one could do in order to step into the Indian market if one is not firm with it. One could participate in one of our DWH online events, for instance. So we will run mid of September, for instance, a web talk series on COVID-19 and the consequences in the fields of social sciences and humanities. This is a good opportunity to have a look what's going on in research in India and also to connect to Indian scientists. The DAAD is offering from time to time opportunities to come to India. We are setting up at the moment for late 21 fact-finding mission for University of Applied Sciences. You should use your alumni, of course, and there's always the possibility to host an Indian scholar. And also the DAAD is offering the possibility to go to India as a short-term lectureship at the university, not maybe in 20, but maybe in the late 21 this opportunity will be there. And there are also funding schemes on the Indian side who would allow you to go to an Indian university and maybe get a teaching experience and to step into the system. Funding is always an issue. We are aware of this, and I just want to draw the attention. There are a lot of funding schemes available. It's not just the German side, and of course there is the DAAD, so there is a lot of funding in place from the DAAD, but we have a lot of prestigious funding from the Indian institutions, and I think we will hear about that in a couple of minutes. And we have a lot of co-funded schemes actually in place, together with the DST and also the Ministry of Education in India. And this is a good sign. So you see that India is investing into science cooperation and higher education cooperation. And last but not least, if you want to get to know all these funding schemes in detail and want to talk to the agency, the German Center for Research and Innovation will run at the 4th of December Indo-German Research Day, where all the Indian funding institutions will all be present, and we will talk about how to initiate cooperation a little bit more in detail. I'm sure you know this website. This is the Förderprogramme side of the DAAD, where you can find all the programs of the DAAD. There are a lot of programs in place for different purposes. And what is upcoming is we are currently working on a brochure on how to initiate cooperation first steps, and we are at the moment collecting all the funding schemes available, not just by the DAAD, for instance, also DFG, but also on the Indian science. Hopefully we can provide the information by the end of the year. Will be also on the websites, of course, but I think there is a good gateway in place at the end of the year. So the key message is not just look into the DAAD funding. We are happy for applications, but sometimes you might not find in the DAAD programs the right program. Then there are other opportunities, and also for your Indian partners, if you have them in place, it's always worth to look into the Indian funding scheme. There is the SPARK scheme, for instance, which is a research cooperation scheme, and we have currently 20 Indo-German projects in this scheme. For instance, the University of Würzburg is running 2 projects in that scheme. yeah, why to connect with us. So, and what we could offer you as DAAD and the German Center for Research Innovation. So we are your gateway to the Indian research innovation landscape, which is sometimes a bit of difficult to navigate. We give you update information. We just mentioned in the presentation our different channels we have in place. We can give you advice and guidance. And we have a well-established network of local partners. So thank you for your attention, and I would like to hand over to Apoorv.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katya. That was rather interesting, and as Katya had encouraged all of you, if you have questions, please feel free to already type them into the chat box. Otherwise, of course, you'll have the opportunity to ask them later. And thank you, Katya, also for sticking to the time limit. I do really appreciate that. Now moving on to the next session. Now this will give you the perspective from the Indian side, and therefore I request Dr. Madhusudan Reddy Nandineni to please also switch on his webcam and his microphone. Just a few words about Dr. Reddy. He basically did his initial higher education in the city of Hyderabad, at the University of Hyderabad, after which then he did his PhD from the Center of Cellular and Molecular Biology, again in Hyderabad, which also led to the identification of, what was it, at least 5 novel hitherto unknown genetic loci involved in water stress tolerance. So he's also had the opportunity to, well, experience internationalism in all its flavors. He has been a postdoc fellow at the Yale University School of Medicine in the USA. He has also been a Max Planck fellow, actually, and numerous times he's received the Max Planck Partner Group Program Award as well, apart from many other such distinctions from Indian as well as international organizations. Dr. Reddy is currently, as I mentioned earlier, the Science Counselor, Science and Technology Counselor at the Indian Embassy in Berlin. So I would now request Dr. Reddy to give his presentation. You have 15 minutes, Dr. Reddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. A very good morning and good afternoon to all of you. And at the outset, I would like to congratulate the DAAD for completing 60 years of its presence in India. A very eventful years they have been. And I'd like to take this opportunity to compliment the DAAD team in Delhi and in Germany for the excellent work and the dedication with which they are doing, and then promoting higher education collaboration between India and Germany. And thank you, Dr. Katya Lash, and thank you, Mr. Apoorv, for giving me this opportunity to speak a few words about the trends and developments in education and research in India. This slide actually tells you in a nutshell the various programs, some of which Dr. Katya Lash has mentioned about the cooperation in the field of science, technology, and also in the higher education between India and Germany. We have several modes of cooperation, mobility of scientists, joint research programs, joint centers, and creation of international mega science facilities. And what are the areas under which these cooperations are going on? They cover almost all areas, including biotechnology, medical and health research, to synchrotron and accelerator research, to digitalization and artificial intelligence. And if you look at agencies in which both India and Germany, German agencies which are involved in this cooperation, we have Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Research, CSIR from Indian side. And from the German side, we have Federal Ministry for Education and Research, and various associations like Helmholtz, Max Planck, and Leibniz, and so on and so forth. India is also part of mega science projects like a facility for antiproton and ion research, and also DAISY. And in higher education cooperation, the field of education, we have very good collaboration between India and Germany. I will talk about the GAN, Vajra, and Sparks programs at a later end. But we have this year, I was very happy to learn that there are 9 projects under the IGP which have been funded in the German partnership program. That's the latest which we got few weeks ago. But not only in this, but a lot of Indian young researchers in the age group of 20 to 30 years, every year they come and spend some time and meet the Nobel laureate. So this is an excellent scheme for a Nobel laureate. We call it as Lindo Nobel laureate meeting, where almost like 450 participants from India have benefited through interactions. And this is how Indo-German cooperation in education is being strengthened and cemented. And as Dr. Lash has said, in the last 5 years, the number of Indian students in Germany has actually doubled, and we are happy that almost like approximately 21,000 Indian students are there presently in Germany. And most of them, if you look at it, are from sciences background, engineering and mathematics. They take the lion's share, and other areas are also there are a significant number of students. And this number of students showing interest to study both undergraduate and master's studies in Germany. They are attracted by the excellent facilities and the education system here. The interest is going up every year. This is as far as the statistics are concerned between India and Germany. But if you look at the last few slides of Dr. Katya Lash, where she alluded to the national educational policy of India, which is the new education policy which has been accepted by the Union government in late July. This is the first education policy in this century, not only in this century, but in this millennium. The previous one was in 1986, and this has laid down a lot of guidelines and policies, how the education, starting from kindergarten till the higher education, how this education system is going to be in India. And these guidelines are being now being slowly implemented in a phase-wise manner, and we are going to see a lot many changes in the coming days. One of the interesting points is that what we people call as demographic dividend, that the large number of students, the younger generation, India is going to have a large pool, the largest pool of people in the age bracket of 20 to 40 years. And among them, there are almost like a large proportion of such population will be in the age bracket of 6 to 17, whom this national education policy is dealing with. And if you look at I have taken two aspects of national NEP 2020, National Education Policy 2020, in which the internationalization of education is being promoted. One is the policy document says that there will be a focus on large number of international students studying in India. The document talks about providing greater mobility to students in India who wish to visit, not only visit but study and transfer credits. This was not possible in the present context, but now the rules and guidelines will be changed so that the students can visit some universities outside and also can actually transfer their credits and carry out research at institutions abroad. And also the students from foreign universities can do the same thing. They can come, visit, study and transfer credits. And programs like Indology in Indian languages, Ayush, system of medicine, yoga, arts, music, history, and modern India, international relevant curricula in the sciences, they will be actually promoted, fostered to attain this goal of global quality standards. And this is one aspect of the internationalization. The second aspect, which I think I would spend a minute or two, is on the scheme where there will be efforts, concerted efforts are being made by the government of India to restore India's role as Vishwa Guru, wherein Vishwa means world, Guru is the teacher. So as Katya Lash has said, one of the important aspects is International Students Office in all higher education institutions, HEI, higher education institutions. One of the problems has been for internationalization is lack of such international student offices. Now the impetus is on establishing such international student offices in most or every higher education institutions in India. And this will help in teaching and research collaborations among faculty and students, and also their exchange and mobility. And one of the important aspects about this policy is high-performing Indian universities now will be encouraged to set up campuses in foreign countries. That means Indian universities and institutions who are very well, highly performing, they will be allowed to set up their campuses outside the country. Similarly, most importantly, is those from among the top 100 universities in the world, the foreign universities, will also be allowed to set up their campuses in India. Right now, it is not possible, but there is a legislative legal framework which is being now facilitated to facilitate such entry of foreign universities into India. So that means they can establish campuses or branches in India so that we can actually have quality education and world-class education the students can get in India. And as I said, the legislative framework is being facilitated. Such universities will be given special dispensation regarding the regulatory mode, the governance, and the content on par with other autonomous institutions of India. That means the foreign universities, when they set up their campus in India or campuses in India, will be given a special dispensation regarding regulations, governance, and what kind of a content they will have, which will be on par with other autonomous institutions. This is a very important thing because autonomy is something which some of the universities and institutions will require to establish such campuses. And global research, research collaboration and students exchanges between Indian institutions and global institutions will be promoted through special efforts. And the important point again in this internationalization aspect is the transfer of credit. The credits acquired in foreign universities will be permitted where appropriate as per requirements of higher education institutions to be counted for the award of degree. This is important because the student can have some credits in one university can now be transferred to another university. This is now being permitted, which was not allowed till now, and a legal framework and the guidelines are being framed. And as Katya said, the existing mechanism where the Indo-German collaboration in higher education and research can be implemented. There are three such excellent programs which are going on. One is the Ministry of Human Resource Development, which is now called as Ministry of Education, which is called a DAAD program, which is Global Initiative of Academic Network. This is an excellent program wherein faculty from our foreign faculty can spend a couple of weeks in India to actually have what we call as exploratory visit. I mean, they can give lectures, guest lectures by internationally, nationally renowned experts, so that they can actually go to a higher education institution or research institution and establish contacts for longer term collaboration. So this GAN is like exploratory visit wherein to establish these networks. This is promoted by the Ministry of Education. The other scheme which is being facilitated by Department of Science and Technology is called VAJRA. VAJRA stands for Visiting Advanced Joint Research Program, which is wherein persons of Indian origin or non-resident Indians, or we call as overseas citizens of India, the faculty or the professors from foreign countries can actually establish linkages with the Indian public funded academic and research institutions, wherein the government of India through DST funds 1 to 3 months of funding, wherein first 1 month they will be provided $15,000, the second and third month $10,000. This is from minimum of 1 month to 3 months. This will again give the faculty to establish linkages with the Indian faculty and students and draw up programs of collaborations which are like more sustainable. And the third scheme which I would talk about is from again Ministry of Education, or previously called the Ministry of Human Resource Development, which is a SPARK program, which is a scheme for promotion of academic and research cooperation. Under this scheme, world-renowned faculty can actually from 28 countries, and Germany included, Germany is also included in these 28 countries, can actually submit a proposal to the government of India, and they can actually, under this scheme, the faculty can spend almost like 2 to 8 months in India, and they can tutor, co-guide the students, establish linkages, and nurture students there. And this again scheme is actually a way of facilitating greater Indo-German collaboration in education and research. Under this scheme, as I said, these three schemes, GAN for a couple of weeks, and Vajra for 1 to 3 months, and Spark for 2 to 8 months. These are different schemes which are actually depending on the faculty and the time constraint. They can apply to these 3 different modes for funding from the Government of India. This will actually help in actually establishing longer term relations in education and research. So with this, I thought I will stop my presentation and I will take any questions which participants may have. But suffice to say that India and Germany are seeing a wonderful phase of cooperation in education and research. Thank you for your attention and giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy. I think very exciting things happening, a lot of which you have just now shared with us. I'm sure there will be questions to come, but before that, before we get into the panel discussion, I would like to introduce the other members of the panel. So the first to start off with is Dr. Salma Baba, I already mentioned, from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. She holds the Jean Monnet Chair of the EU Security and Peace Conflict Resolution at the Center for European Studies. More about her, she has a lot of experience in the international sphere with various countries, but special, I think, the connection that she has to Germany is very special. She is the foremost expert in German foreign and security policy. She, of course, has been a recipient of numerous, I would say, fellowships and schemes and funding. That goes without saying. She's a member, academic advisory board member of GIGA in Hamburg, and the Research Advisory Council of the Stiftung Wissenschaft und Politik in Berlin. Another interesting thing about her that you may not be aware is that she is the recipient of the Bundesverdienstkreuz, which she was awarded in the year 2012. So, and a personal friend. Without that, I think this introduction would be incomplete. So, Salma, Dr. Salma Baba, can I request you to try and switch on your webcam, please? And the second panelist that will also be joining us will be Dr. Dietmar Müller. So I also request Dr. Müller to maybe switch on his webcam. He completed his PhD from the University of Bremen in Germany, started off his career with Dräger AG, so in the industry, where he managed R&D, product development and marketing of medical equipment. He has worked at the University of Hamburg also in various phases. He has held positions at the TU Clausthal. Currently, he is at the TU Clausthal. He is the professor for stochastic models in engineering sciences. His research areas include cyber physical systems and cybersecurity, car IT and cybersecurity, and the digital transformation in the Industry 4.0. Dr. Müller also has hundreds of papers and books to his credit. So I think with this vast experience, this international experience that both of these panelists have, I would like to start off by asking them some basically the same question. But before that, maybe can I request to Dr. Katya Lash and also to Dr. Reddy to switch on their webcams as well, so we can shift over to the panel mode to this discussion. Thank you so much. Dr. Reddy's camera is there now. That's wonderful. Okay, so this is the start of our panel discussion, and therefore, since Dr. Müller and Dr. Baba have not yet had the point or the opportunity to introduce themselves, you have both a long-standing academic cooperation with probably many countries. So what makes this cooperation with Germany vis-a-vis your cooperation with India different? Maybe we could just start off by having a 1-minute answer to this from both of you. Probably starting with Dr. Baba first.
Thank you, Apur.
Now it's good.
I hope the volume is clear. Thank you so much, and let me once again congratulate DAAD on this occasion of the 60th anniversary. I think this is befitting, and maybe distances can be bridged in the digital way, and hopefully one day we will meet face to face. So it's been a long association for me. I have already got more than 32 years of teaching and research experience in which the DAAD is a central pillar of my life, I would say. For me, I think, the DAAD has been a platform for 3 things I would point out. First, for professional and institutional, building up and collaboration. Second, for creating a knowledge cooperation. And third, a network of support, which has meant that what began for me as a student has continued professionally to bring in others. I have been a part of many different projects, Apurva, as you have pointed out, and let me just tell the audience over here that I have received from a PhD a small fellowship which would play a role in beginning and creating it off. I was part of the New Passage to India, which would help to connect the social science dimension to the public policy dimension in Germany and bring interest in studies on contemporary India. I think that was very, very critical, and I would commend DAAD on launching the New Passage to India. Part of a BMBF project of the advanced study institutes which were launched, part of the very first initiative. And I'm very happy to say that I'm in the last bit of the UGC DAAD launched Indo-German partnership, which in German is deutsch-indische Partnerschaft, for the IGP project first round, which was from 2016 to 2020. And all of them have produced, a tremendous amount of output, I could say. It has addressed the keywords which have been brought up by my, two co-panelists. It has produced knowledge. It has created those networks, and most importantly, the internationalization which is being spoken about today. So I think we stand at a very important point, and I would hand over, the mic back to you, Apurva, and come in more into the discussion that these have produced the results, and unlike others, DAAD has walked the talk. It has put in the money in the earlier part. I think it was much later, that money started opening up on the Indian side as well, and that is but natural when you look at the kind of asymmetry which was there. And I think the returns have come in a multidimensional way. Today, it is an equal partnership. That's what I want to emphasize through the DAAD IGP initiative, UGC initiative. Is an equal partnership. It also tells you how, there has been a fundamental shift, but what we do in academia is always less, I believe, and we still need to do a lot. So I'm very happy for the initiative and look forward to the discussion further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Selma. Can we also have some opening remarks from Dr. Müller?
Yes. At the very first, congratulations to DAAD for the 60 years in Indo-German cooperation. And I will let you know a little bit about our INCPAR project, which stands for Indo-German Partnership in Advanced Research and Education. And we have heard from Katja the term digitalization. And this brings me to the main focus of our project, because when we started to apply for a grant together with the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, with my dear friend and colleague Professor Akhilesh, we're thinking, so what should be the focus on which we want to train our students? And digitalization is the future aspect the young people need to know and to understand. And if you look at digitalization from a general perspective, you can say, well, at the one hand, there is, from the higher education perspective, the point of online courses, making use of digital technologies in this regard. And at the research field, we see, okay, what are the technologies beyond digitalization? This is a fourth technological wave. And so we were thinking about what are the key elements in this fourth technological wave. So these are cyber-physical systems, which includes systems at multiple scale and can be seen in autonomous cars, smart cities, smart manufacturing, and many others. So that means we really have to focus on desktop. On the other hand, because cyber systems bring together the virtual and the physical worlds, so we have to look at cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is the next important issue. And in this regard, we have to see, so what methods are required to understand cybersecurity? And this is, for instance, artificial intelligence and specific algorithms like machine learning or deep learning. So this was what we have written down in our application, and we got funded from 2016 to 2020 in the IGP program. And now we're looking, so how we can arrange it. So we want to do education, so we really focus on online courses for a specific group of selected students at the master level as well as the PhD students, because in regard to the online media, we also can support the students from the Indian to the German side and from the German to the Indian side. And in regard to the exchange and that we can meet face-to-face, we really have set up 2 schools, a spring school and a fall school. Why spring, why fall? Indians in Bangalore mostly do not know snow. So we say, okay, in spring we invite the Indian students to Clausthal because then there is snow. And they will see, oh, snow, now I've never seen that. So this is something different. In the fall, it gets cold and rainy in Clausthal. And we go to Bangalore and say, my goodness, it's so warm, it's so beautiful, it's so nice. So you'll see there is something very special in the respective partner country. And this was for us a very important issue. So these schools have been organized as follows. From each school, there was a keynote which focused on the topic of the respective school, and for this school and in regard to this keynote, students, mostly PhD and master students, show their research results, which is monitored by the Indian side and the German side. And there was a strategy to run this as projects. Because the idea behind the project was, if the outcome is good, we want to publish this outcome out of the INPA project with regard to students from India as well as Germany at international conferences. And this was really something what really enforced the students to do such good research work in this country, to their PhD thesis and so on. And we get a lot of very good publications in this regard. And so we came from digitalization at the very first to the very specific topics: cyber physical systems, cyber security, digital transformation, Internet of Things, to applications in the manifold of domains like autonomous cars, smart cities, smart manufacturing. And based on that, my colleague, Professor Akhilesh, and I, we really enjoyed working together. And the good thing for the students, PhD and master, was they built their Indo-German network. So they collaborate, making use of digital technology when not be in the partner country.
That's right. Can I ask you a question related to this, to you and also to Dr. Bava? Since you say establishing networks, finding collaborators. So I think that is always a key, finding a prospective collaborator, and it's a rather difficult task. I mean, that's what I think most of the universities that are here will be asking themselves. How do I find a collaborator? How do I handle it? Are there any tips and tricks on how you managed to find your collaborators? So would you like to comment on that? Salma, maybe you can start. I think Dr. Müller seems to have been logged out of the system.
Okay. I would say that what helped is if somebody has already studied, is then to use that same base to plug in back into the system, not now as a student, but somebody from the professional side. So as an academic, to do that. The other thing, what would facilitate today, which I've seen over a period of time, is that today in most of the central universities in India, which has been pointed out also by Dr. Reddy, we have an international office. So that can become a first point of contact. There is a digital or a web presence which was not there in the early 90s, and that was a very big challenge when face-to-face was extremely important. Today, a third way of looking and shortlisting what could be a probable candidate for a cooperation for any of the German universities would also be the internal rankings of Indian universities which have been put out by the ministry. So we have the NRF rankings, and I'm very happy to say JNU tops the ranking, in that for social sciences and also for science as well. So these are some ways of what I would say the tips and tricks of trying to reach out. And as Katya also pointed out, the DAAD Delhi office also acts as a nodal point in giving out information. So I think this is another possibility. The other thing would be also where the international office of a particular German university can look at the kind of programs and research emphases are there, in some of the select Indian universities, and then probably also think of undertaking a physical trip. This is how was also done in the past, and we have done this as well with FU Berlin. I was able to bring in the dean of about 8 schools to spend 2 hours with the international office. So that was a one-to-one facilitation which I did through one of the projects, through the IGP project that I had actually. That's what I did. So since we will not be in a face-to-face mode and we would have to do a digital, I think this would also enable, a checking out and asking. Cross-referencing is always a good way to ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, Dr. Bava. Now that Dr. Müller is back again, I'll repeat the question to you also. What is the trick in finding a collaborator? And related to that, Clausthal is a relatively smaller institution, compared to many ones that are, have thousands and thousands of students. So is a smaller university at a disadvantage when searching for a collaborator or even for applying for funding? What is your take on that?
I don't think so. That's a disadvantage because a small university has the opportunity that it can arrange something very special for such a program, such a collaboration, because it's easier to achieve compared to a bigger university with a couple of 10,000 of students. And the interesting thing in this regard is we have in Clausthal 30% of our students from foreign countries, so China, USA, India, and so on. So we have an Indian community in Clausthal. We have an Indian restaurant in Clausthal too, so this is something which is pretty nice to know for Indian students. And for our students, it is very important that they learn something about a big university, like Indian Institute of Science, which has a couple of 10,000 students. And so we came up with, on the one hand, a small, on the other hand, a big institution. And the students at both sides don't know how the academic work runs at a small size or a big size from the respective view, from the big and the small university. And I think this is a very good experience, and I hope it will happen much more in the near future. That also, because we have a couple of smaller universities, if you look at Freiburg and so on, that they open themselves and run international collaborations like the Indo-German cooperation.
Right. Thank you so much for your response, Dr. Müller. Maybe I'll take one question now that I see from the audience. And I would like to address this question to both Dr. Lash and also to Dr. Reddy. I'll read out the question. It's from a representative of the HTW Dresden. It's concerning finding collaborator. As a University of Applied Science, we would like to establish contact with universities with the interest in practical-oriented education, especially in the field of economics and engineering. So what is the reputation of German universities of applied science in India? And is there a high interest in these universities? Maybe we can start with Katya and then Dr. Reddy can add to that.
Yeah, sure, and thank you for the question. I think that the universities of applied science are not so well known yet in India, especially the smaller institutions. And I think when you're looking for cooperation partners, it's always good to look at a cooperation partner who's at your level, so they have cooperation on the same level. So what we witness sometimes is that let us say smaller universities from Germany coming to India and aiming at cooperating with Iit Madras, for instance, or Iit Bombay. Now, these are the leading institutions, and that they might not even be in a good fit. So I would suggest to look also in smaller institutions in India, like the NITs, or there are now new IITs funded who are looking into new cooperation partners. I can say that transfer and that practical orientated training is on the map of the Indian government. There are a lot of programs taking place. But if you look especially in the fields of economics and engineering, it's worth to not just look at the 10 big universities and maybe to have a look to see what they are offering, and then that would be a nice fit and match, I think. And I think that's pretty important when you look into that. the University of Applied Sciences are not so well known. We are working on that as a DAAD also. I mean, hopefully are able next year to bring a couple of universities also to India and then to introduce them to the Indian system. I think there's a bit of information work to be done on our side, but especially in the field of engineering and economics, I think there's a lot to offer, and would be glad to help out and with that regard to find a good partner who is looking into cooperation with Germany, into exchange, and where the University of Applied Science could work with. Of course, everybody is looking in the big universities also into Germany, so RWTH Aachen is well known, TU Munich, LMU Munich. But what we've seen in the applications, and maybe that's the good news in the applications for the DAAD scholarships lately, is that there are smaller universities appearing more and more. So it's not just, not everybody wants to go to Munich or Aachen. A lot of people will, but we see in the applications that there is an interest, and we as DAAD are fostering that, and we are very glad that, for instance, one of the mentioned IGP projects, Indo-German partnership projects, that there's one University of Applied Science who managed to succeed in this competition for project funding, which is the University of Applied Science am Bergweiden. So we are looking into that topic, and but there's still a bit of work to do.
I would maybe like to add to this in my capacity as the Director Marketing of the regional office in New Delhi. What we've noticed after evaluating is that of the Indian students in Germany, slightly more than 60% are enrolled in universities, and approximately 35% or so were enrolled in universities of applied sciences. So one can clearly see that there is a gap. But the good news here is that the number of students joining universities of applied science in Germany has been rising. So it's 35% the last we evaluated it, but it was 30%, 3 years back. So there is, I think, this move now slowly towards the universities of applied science. But I would also now like to request Dr. Reddy to maybe give his personal opinion about universities of applied science and their image in the Indian academic context.
Basically, thanks, Mr. Kapoor. It's a very excellent question. I mean, Dr. Lash has answered that. But what I would like to add to what Dr. Lash has said is that as per a recent survey, I mean not so recent survey, maybe last year's survey, that 50% of the Indian workers need reskilling. So there is a great emphasis which the government is putting on skilling, reskilling of people so that their employability chances go up. And that is where these applied sciences universities and the interest in Germany's dual education system, vocational education and training. There's a tremendous interest in these aspects. I am actually personally looking at this dual system of education in Germany from the perspective of skill development so that the employability skills go up. And if there's anything which we can do, I request that also to help me in this regard so that we can actually promote such a system. There is a tremendous interest of Indianizing this VET system. You can't actually copy-paste the VET system, vocational education and training in Germany, and copy-paste in India. There has to be some changes. And also on skill development, which are the two important aspects. That is where I think various universities of applied sciences come into picture, and that is what I think in the future we may have to spend more efforts on this in these lines. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I have a next question that's coming up. That's again now directed to Dr. Bava and Dr. Müller from the TU Dresden. The question is, do you have experience with dual or joint PhDs between technical universities in Germany and universities in India? Would either of you like to remark on this, please?
Well, we have experience, but unfortunately not with India, because this is that the two systems are a little bit different, especially if it comes to PhD, so whom is first supervisor, second one, and how this can be arranged. We have one, in the last years of the INCPAR project, we have one PhD where we accept an Indian professor as a supervisor in PhD thesis at TU Glasgow. And I hope that based on this experience we will gain in another round of collaboration, we can make it easier. But the two systems needs to be more flexible to go together in the same direction in this regard, because research is research, and if you can supervise it from a common perspective for both partners, there is a win-win situation of benefit, but it has to be enhanced.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let me just share what I know from this. There is a possibility for joint PhD, but the issue is about what kind of regulations exist. I think that is the first point to address. A second point is also about funding. And I'm very happy to say that within the DAAD, there is the sandwich model, which allows to some extent a joint PhD to be done. In the sense the student is located and registered primarily in India, gets the degree from the Indian parent university, but the research proposal is co-supervised right from the inception by also a German guide. So that has enabled the development, so to speak, of two guides to also work in tandem with the research scholar so as to produce what we would call this. But we've not had where students are, getting it from both universities. The degree then is given from the parent Indian university. There is one other successful long-running program we have at my university, the JNU in New Delhi. And that is a global studies program, which is part of a consortium network in which German universities are also a part of it. And the students then, it's Erasmus funding also available. They are studying in Germany, they're studying in South America, in South Africa, and come to India. So there are, I would say, limited models as such. And probably, this is the future. We need to, if you're thinking of innovation, we're thinking of research, we're looking at how digital will break down, then to some extent one component in social science, and my colleague Professor Muller is also saying, there is a possibility that we can promote these ideas.
Yeah, great.
I think that before I come to Dr. Reddy, Katya also wanted to add something.
Yeah, I wanted that, and thanks for mentioning the sandwich model. I mean, the Indian regulations in PhD allow for an external supervisor. I just went through the regulations. We have certain legal issues in issuing a joint degree, but there is the possibility to cooperate on PhD level. We are aware of a couple of joint degrees on the master level. There are 3 or 4 in place with German institutions, but there are difficulties to implement it. But there is the possibility to cooperate, and I'm glad that that Professor Baba mentioned the European training networks. So India has been extremely successful in the participation of the ETNs. So we just got the numbers of the European Commission, and so we have a lot of Indian students who are in the European training networks. And I think that's something one could definitely look into it. So Indian universities seem to be used to these European training networks, PhD networks, which then are established with different European institutions, and we see that India has been extremely successful in these European training networks with the universities. It's definitely something one look also into, not just into the Indian funding or the German funding, to have a look also in the UXs and in the European funding. We have to see what's upcoming now with the Horizon Europe program. But there has been a good success rate and a lot of mobility taking place also in these networks.
Some very useful remarks. Thank you so much, Katya. Dr. Reddy also wanted to add to this.
Yeah, so this is again an important aspect which has been raised, but I can tell you a couple of points which may be helpful in this direction. One is recently in July, a couple of IITs, IIT Roorkee, IIT Bombay, and IIT, I think, Kharagpur, have entered into an agreement with the University of Alberta in Canada, wherein they have this joint degree program, wherein they'll have 2 students, or maximum of 2 students from each of these institutes, will have a joint PhD degree between University of Alberta and IIT. So the fact is, these things are now developing, where you have institutes of eminence where they have autonomy to a certain extent in the awarding degrees. They are the ones who are actually promoting this. So one way is to look at this institute of eminence, like central universities and other universities where there are institutes of eminence, where there is more autonomy. They can actually develop this. PhD degree is one model which actually works, so joint supervision, as the previous moderators have, previous panelists have said. And we actually have a very decent model, University of Alberta and IIT MOU in this direction.
But thank you so much. That's, I think, interesting. There's a lot developing in this area, and that brings me back. Dr. Reddy, I have another question I thought may be relevant for you. Since the scenario is really changing dramatically, drastically, there's so many changes and new things that are being introduced. Internationalization, which maybe till 10 years back was, not unheard of, is all of a sudden assuming a lot of importance. So A, what is the rationale and what is the reason? Why is the Indian government at this point of time realizing the importance? What has led to that? And do you think that this situation will stay on, or is it likely to change after 5 years, let's say, with a change in government?
I mean, I can't answer for what the policy decisions and policy, people who have formulated this and the Ministry of Education might have in the mind. But my understanding, my personal understanding is that this is long overdue. The changes in this national education policy were long overdue, and it is a very progressive document where it is going to change the way the education system is going to be in India, starting from kindergarten, I think year 2 or year 3, till higher education. And I think in the next 20 years, India wants to position itself as Vishwaguru, as the document says. I mean, wherein it want to position itself as one of the top destinations where giving premium education at an affordable cost. So it will attract not only universities from various foreign countries, but it wants to attract various students, foreign students to India and give education at the affordable cost. So this document says that, I mean, a lot of revolutionary things which have been put into this document, and I think it's going to change the way we see the system.
All right. Thank you for this diplomatic answer, but I appreciate what you said. Thank you so much. What I would also now probably encourage the audience to ask more questions, but some general questions that mostly come to us are related to funding. So in that regard, maybe I'd just like to ask Dr. Lash first, then a couple more questions of practical nature to the university representatives. But first to Katya Lash, in terms of the funding mechanisms, in terms of what DAAD has. So what would you suggest a university that is here right now that is still undecided? They are looking for partners. So what are some of the interesting projects or some of the interesting mechanisms of the DAAD that they could be looking at?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have a lot of funding schemes in place, and sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to navigate through these schemes. So not every scheme fits every university, and there are schemes which, and I think that's really important to see, there are smaller schemes which are quite useful. So if you are in university, at the beginning, maybe you have a contact to an Indian university. I would not apply for Indo-German partnership, which is for more advanced universities, but a study trip may be good. So there is this program in place where you could invite a group of students from an Indian university to your German university and to run a study trip. And there's also the opportunity to go on a study trip to India with your students when the COVID situation is over. Of course, at the moment we have some restrictions, I have to say. And then there are other programs. So a second step could then be, why not to invite Indian scholars. So you can host a PhD student. You could host an Indian scholars. We have the program where we would invite for 3 months, and you could invite for 3 months an Indian scholar. That would be a good opportunity to discuss a project with them, to develop further, and to see where one could take it, maybe in a research project. Then we have in place, if you're looking into double degree programs, there is the double degree programs on the master level which we support. So this would be a next step. So I think one has to build up cooperation slowly. What we've seen a bit in the application of, for instance, the IGP, which we've been in the selection, that sometimes there were quite good, interesting projects, but not for the IGP. So we suggested them to apply in another program by the DAAD. So one has to take it step by step. I have to have a look into funding schemes and not to forget the Indian funding schemes, and that's what we are seeing. So there is exactly the same scheme which we are having, inviting Indian professors to a German university. There is the possibility for Indian institutions to invite a German professor, which generous funding, I have to say, from the Indian side. So the GIAN network is there, and we've seen an increase in German professors, but would love to see coming more to India. And there is, of course, also on the Indian side, there is the Spark scheme mentioned. So there are funding mechanisms available. And last but not least, if you want to, for instance, initiate a research project, there is the co-funding available, as mentioned in my presentation. So the PPP, so there's a project with the Indian government, which is meant to be a mobility scheme to develop further funds and which could lay the fundament, for instance, for a DFG application. So I think one has to have a look, has a strategy in place. I would consider that important, and to take it slowly and build it up step by step. So don't apply for a DFG funding if you have contact first time to your Indian partner. And I think that's really important, to take it step by step and to have a look in the different mechanisms, and also to tell your Indian partners what is available on the Indian side, and maybe the Indian partners could tell the Germans what is available on the German side. That's why we are working on this publication at the moment for both of the parties. But yeah, step by step would be a strong suggest. And I think we have such a lot of programs in place for different purposes. And as I mentioned, if you have struggled, then just let us know. We can also navigate you through, and not just look into the DAAD, look also into other mechanisms.
Maybe Dr. Miller, can I also ask from your own personal perspective, what works if you're looking for funding as a German university? Is there some, 2 or 3 tips and tricks that you could give others who are desirous or who are in that process right now?
Yes.
I know they're your competition, but maybe you would like to help them nonetheless.
The most important thing is that you know potential partners. And the best would be you have gained some experience working with them before you apply for like the IGP program. And there was a case in the INPA project. So I know my partner for a while because he invites me as a keynote speaker for a conference in India and Bangalore. And then we were talking about what other options we have to work together and make a common proposal and work in a specific research area together and in the education area. With a perspective that we want to show the German students how academic life is in India, and the Indian students how German life is here. And this was the reason I mentioned before. Show them how winter looks like in the spring in Germany, and how the fall looks like summer in India. And this is the most important issue, as I know from other collaborations with China or with the US. You have to know somebody, and you have to be sure that he has the same motivation like you. Otherwise, it will not work. And so if we have agreed that after this conference, yes, we want to do it, then we really make it.
That's interesting. Thank you. So as Katja first said, you have to look out, find the right match. Now we have some hints from Dr. Miller as to how you can go about it. Now, assuming that you get the funding, you have a funding. The next question now comes to Dr. Bava. You have an ongoing project. So what are some of the challenges that you could likely face in an ongoing project? Maybe from your experience, and how do you resolve them if they crop up?
So of course the biggest challenge is the COVID. It caught us on the last year of our IGP project, which means everything is stalled. So we are waiting to, hopefully, because a big part of the IGP is mobility. And so, you can't undertake your travel because of the restrictions. So I think I endorse totally what Katja said, and what Professor Moller said. I think it's very important to start small, to recognize where your strengths are, and to look out at, as I said, rankings are available of Indian universities to where there could be possible opportunities of matchmaking. May I also say that there are extremely good second-tier Indian institutions also coming up, and yes, that could also be a point. So let me tell you that I went to Germany under the New Passage to India to one of the universities every summer to give lectures on contemporary India that allow to build a partnership with colleagues whom I just did not know. I was invited through a third department, and then this relationship evolved. And so in 2016, when the IGP call came, as Professor Molla also said, you have to know your counterpart very well, because it was to be a tandem proposal, which means it was almost mirrored. And so this enabled us then, this close cooperation, to then write a project like that, where one time I called from India at 2 a.m. in the morning, and my German counterpart said, shouldn't you be in bed? I said, we need to finish the project proposal, right? So you could just pick up the phone and call, that kind of comfort level and the passion that we need to get it through. So I would say that the project allowed a lot of flexibility in planning, and that's fantastic about what the UGC allowed on the Indian side. I commend it on both the German and the Indian side. So you have to address, and both sides have been very cooperative under the what COVID has done. We would have thought we would have lost it, but I think it is fantastic at the way it's come through. And other little things you can always address. One big issue in the more recent time has been getting a visa to go to Germany. Not for me personally, but I think that is probably a result of all the efforts that DAAD is doing, that more number of students are applying, and the rules have changed a little bit. So you need to start well in advance, to get that visa application in. But I think you can work it out. It's not so difficult.
Okay. Thank you so much. So administrative hassles are always a part of also successful projects, and you have to learn to manage them. That's a very clear message also there. Thank you. What Katya just mentions here is the ranking system that India has put into place, the NIRF ranking of India. I think it's a very useful link which all the participants who are joined this session should look at. And the partner institution has applied. Okay, accreditation link is also given there. Now, we still have approximately 10 minutes or so before we go into the next phase of today's session, which is going to be the one-on-one questions. So in this larger round, if some of the participants would still like to ask some questions, there are just a couple of minutes left. Otherwise, we will be taking some closing remarks. But did I just see a hand go up from Dr. Reddy? Did you want to comment on something, please?
Add to what Dr. Lash has said, I mean, we need to increase, this is what I have been trying to do for the last 6-7 months I'm here, that we need to increase the number of German students and faculty going. And that is where the large number of Indian students and faculty coming to Germany, but we need to see how best we can increase this reverse flow, or what I would say, German students and going to India. That's one aspect. The second aspect is under the SPARK program, which Dr. Lash has said, there are a large number of universities. If I'm not wrong, there are almost like 20 to 28 universities who are actually eligible to apply under the SPARK program. There's an excellent program which universities can apply, the German universities. And only 14 of them have actually applied under various SPARK programs, the ones which have been approved till now. And there are at least another 10 to 14 universities who are eligible to apply, but they are not applying. Eligibility is that there is certain criteria under QS 500 ranking, the MHRD or Ministry of Education has said. The other universities have not participated in it. Is there anything one could do to encourage the other universities which are eligible to apply? But coming back to Professor Muller's point, that it has to be a bottom-up approach, that we can't say you apply, but it has to be a bottom-up approach where the faculty or the PIs know each other, and then they develop the project, the proposal, and then start applying. But if there is anything which can be facilitated, one needs to look into that.
Thank you so much. I think very important words that you said there. I think it's almost time for us to shift to the next session, but before we do, maybe can I ask all the panelists just to give maybe, Dr. Müller, have you raised your hand? Would you like to add on something?
Yes.
Please do.
From a more formal perspective, because at the very first, you have to be motivated in the same way so that you feel the passion why you want to do it. But a very important first step is signing an MOU. So, and if you really struggle signing an MOU between the Indian and the German partner side, nothing will work. So that was the next step we really did, coming up with an MOU. Okay, we plan to submit a proposal and we want to get a grant for that, what we have in mind. But at the very first, our two universities have to agree, yes, We will support you. And this was the MOU. This was the killing factor. We received it. We haven't been killed because we get the MOU signed, but this could be a very important point if you apply, and then at the very first you have to come up with the MOU, and we did it in advance.
Okay, no, that's a very important point, of course. And maybe with that, that leads me to my closing questions to all the panelists. If there's one message that you'd like to give the participants of today's meeting, maybe we start with you, Dr. Miller. What is, other than the MOU, would you want to include any other one important point that they should remember if they want to collaborate?
Yes, beside MOU, I mentioned that's a more formal one, and the motivation and the passion is you have to be keen to learn about the society, the culture of this state, in this case India, with the people you want to work for a couple of years together. So you have to be keen on that. Not, okay, we get some money and that's okay to have it. No, you have to keen to learn yourself. You have to build up your experience with people from India in a close relationship of a project to support them, to work together, to publish, and so on. This is, I think, the most important thing beside mutual interest and passion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Dr. Reddy, from your side, one point everyone should remember.
Exciting phase, I would say, to forge cooperation in the field of education and research. India has come up with this document, and I think it's, it actually establishes a lot of parameters when actually to promote internationalization of education, and that is where Indian and German universities and research institutions should actually make use of these provisions and then establish stronger relations in this.
Thank you so much.
And the guidelines and the legislative framework is being facilitated, and this is the time one could actually seriously think how we can go a step higher than what we have been seeing all this.
Thank you so much for your input. Dr. Lash.
Yeah, would maybe relate to that and say India has a lot to offer. It's not just about the well-known institutions, and we of course should encourage them to go further with their cooperation and encourage them. But yeah, there's a lot of it's manageable. I can tell after being a year to India, and I would really love to encourage also smaller institutions to have a look into India. And I think India has one big advantage, which everybody forgets always. You can manage your cooperation in English language. You don't have language hurdles. Everybody speaks English in the higher education system in India, and you will have partners who have been educated abroad, be it Germany, be it the US. So you have partners who have had the international experience, which make things a lot of easier. So no language barriers, and you find good cooperation partners, and I mean on a personal level, in the Indian higher education system, all over the system, at least the universities I have visited. That's
very practical and very useful hint. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Saima Baba.
Thank you, Apur. I'd like to say 3 points. One is, from a personal experience, start small. That's extremely important. MOUs, as Professor Muller pointed out, are important if you want to go in for formal funding. Otherwise, the personal interaction is key to the success. You can have 100 MOUs, but if there's no person willing to pick it up, it will not function. And third is perseverance. You can't give up. If your first application doesn't succeed, you can't give up. You have to continue. Today, unlike 30 years back, I can tell you there are many instruments available on both sides. So that really enables it. Matching instruments, are available. That can be done. And I think, as Professor Muller also pointed out, you have to be inquisitive to learn. Otherwise, it will stay in some kind of a file. The project will never take off. So I think it's important, and I think we have very good instruments to enable from just sending a PhD student under a sandwich model to having a personal exchange to full-fledged partnerships. And Kati has also put out, the rankings and all. So I think it's also good where India is looking at skill development, building up more as the economy will expand and grow, and what digital and AI will bring in. So I think that the future has a lot more potential when we're looking at how all the universities on both sides can cooperate and take it from there.
Right, thank you. That's excellent. So maybe what I'll just sum up before we move into the next phase, which is going to be a, let me call it a mute phase, because we will not be hearing one another once we change over to the last bit. What I'd like to sum up what you people have just now said, the key messages for all of those right before we end is A, start small, be personal, have passion, be motivated, realize that there is a large potential that India has and a lot of practical ease that comes along with choosing India as a partner. Internationalization, digitalization is here to stay, so you're looking at good prospects. And one thing that Salma mentioned, which I think from my perspective as an Indian also I'd like to mention, is perseverance is important. Nothing happens just like so, you have to be at it. So I think if you have that patience and perseverance, then in the long run, it will definitely pay off. Yeah. And with these last concluding remarks, I would like to thank all our panelists for their valuable time for spending this 1.5 hours and the coming half an hour with us. And also I'd like to thank all those who registered and participated from various universities in this particular session. Thank you so very much. This session is being recorded, as I mentioned in the beginning, and will be made available later on by the team of the Netzwerk Conference. Thank you also to the organizers of the Netzwerk Conference, the entire organizational team who has been behind making this possible. So a big thank you from my side personally and from the DAAD-Außenstelle side. And with this, I think once we move to the last layout of the session, we will not be able to hear me. So I wish you all the very, very best and look forward to a lot of applications and a lot of successful funding sanctions that you people may be getting.